Hi, welcome to the second video of the series. My name is Jessie Rebik, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your materials for your first painting session. In addition to the setup, I'm also going to talk about some of the precautions you need to take when painting with oil paints, as well as how to clean and maintain your brushes and clean up your painting location. In the last video, I went through the required materials for the class. And as you can see, I've got a much smaller surface here this time around. And that's a good indication that for the setup of your first painting session, you're not going to need everything. So I'm going to explain to you what you do need and how to kind of get everything put together, get prepared for an efficient painting session. And just to kind of become familiar with the materials and with the paint. Okay, for this particular class session, we are not going to be making a finished painting. It is just going to be using the materials, becoming familiar with them, just getting a feel for their physical properties and knowing how to use them in the future for when we do make finished paintings. All right. So the first thing you're going to need will be sort of your setup here. I've got an easel, okay? It has been height adjusted already. And your classroom may have a variety of different easels, or you may have your own personal easel. Easels come in lots of different shapes, sizes, brands. You can find tabletop easels. You can find these floor easels. So I'm not going to go too much into the technicalities about how to adjust an easel because they're all very different. And from my experience, they seem pretty self-explanatory. If you can just kind of get a good look at where the knobs and the different buttons and things are, then you can usually figure out how to set it. If you need help, I'm sure you can ask your instructor, whether that is me or anybody else. Okay, so once your easel is ready, you're also going to need a cart, okay, or some sort of table that you can put all of your materials on. In this classroom, we have a bunch of these nice painting carts. They have wheels, they're multi-tiered, and they're about seat height, so they're convenient to paint with. You will need your palette. Okay, so you're going to have to put your paint on something for it to mix. You're going to need your paint. Okay, I've got that here. Again, I only have what I'm going to use. I don't need all the paints in my collection. I just need a few that I intend to use for this particular session. I need my medium. Okay, I have Liquin. Okay, I need my paint thinner or mineral spirits, and it should be in my cleaning jar. Okay, as you can see, this is again the coiled cleaning jar. And as you can see, the mineral spirits are poured in and they are above the top of the coil. Okay, it doesn't matter how far above it is, as long as it's not, the top of the liquid is not underneath the top of the coil. Okay. You will need your brushes. Okay, so again, only as many as you're going to use in this session. Okay, and I just took out 2. I wasn't super selective about it. You can choose whichever brushes you would like to use. And a palette knife. And you will need paper towels. Okay, so I just tore one off. A rag would be fine as well. But I just tore one off and I have it sitting here for when I need to wipe away the excess paint. And obviously I'm wearing my overshirt. You do need to, again, be sure you're protecting your clothing. And what I'm painting on is a sheet of canvas paper. Okay, so I have just pinned this to my canvas, to the backboard of the easel, or I pinned this to the backboard of the easel. And that's what I will be painting on for this first session. All right, so to set up, first of all, just to show you how I'm going to hold the easel, it's going to be like this. There's a nice thumb hole, and I'll just be holding it like that. So I want to, with that in mind, put the paint and the medium on the easel. Okay, and like I said before, Liquin has a little bit of a thicker consistency. And because of this, it usually, actually it came out pretty watery, it usually will stay contained to the easel or to the palette. And it got a little runny there, so I'm going to use my paper towel. And that's probably just because I didn't shake it up. So I'll use my palette knife and put a little bit of the Liquin onto my palette. And then, because I want to declutter, I'm going to get it off, get the bottle off of the surface. Okay. So now I'm going to put out just tiny little dabs of paint. Okay, oil paint, a little goes a long way. Okay, so you don't need much, especially for this first session. In fact, what I'm putting out on the palette is probably more than what I need for this demonstration. Okay, and I just chose these colors at random. I've got alizarin crimson, raw umber, which is the brown that I previously put on the palette, and then titanium white. And you'll notice that these paints are different brands. Okay, they are different sizes of tubes, but they're all oil paint. Okay, and that's the main thing you want to be sure of when you are selecting your paints, is that it's all oil paint. Okay, so you can't mix, or you don't want to mix acrylic and oil. You don't want to mix like alkyds or water-based oil paints. You want to make sure it's pure oil paint. And that's not to say that you can never do any of those things. You certainly can, and painters do. But for an introductory painting class, if you're just using oil paint consistently, the results will be predictable. And that is what we want as you learn how to just know what to expect from the paint. Okay. So I'm opening my cleaning jar just so you can see that I can use the mineral spirits as a medium, meaning I can mix the mineral spirits with paint to create kind of a watery consistency. Okay, so when I mix the oil paint with the mineral spirits, it kind of takes on the appearance of watercolor. Okay, we call that a wash. Okay. Under normal circumstances, I want to have the lid closed on my cleaning jar. Okay, the only time it should be open is when I'm using it. You don't want to be inhaling that material if you can help it. Okay. I can use my palette knife, kind of show you how to mix up some of the materials. And actually, this demonstration isn't one that you necessarily need to see as far as how I mix paint. The mixture of paint to medium, the ratio of Liquin to paint or mineral spirits to paint, all of that comes down to a personal preference. Some people like their paint a little more runny, more fluid. Some people like it like really kind of more solid and sticky and tacky. Again, that's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong way. Some people don't even use medium. They just mix straight paint. Some people keep their paint very washy and just stick with the mineral spirits. Okay, so that's up to you. And the whole purpose of this session is just to kind of play. Okay, so blend some of the paint together. See if you can put some colors on the canvas, mix it around, Try different brush strokes, maybe try different paint application techniques. Kind of experiment with the amount of medium that you use. Okay, so a lot of medium is going to create kind of a glaze or a transparent layer of paint. Okay, whereas less is going to create a much more solid and opaque layer of paint. Okay, so just play. Okay, you might want to consider using your palette knife to apply some of the paint. I'm just going to mix up some here. Okay, that just creates a very different kind of texture, surface texture, different kind of mark making. Okay, so that's what you can do with this class period. Is just play and get used to it. And wipe all the excess liquid out of your brush. Okay, so I'm not like rubbing it against the coils. I want to get as much of the paint and the excess pigment out of the brush as I can before I resort to rubbing it against the coils. Okay, so once the brush, if it's still coming back, like in this case, I'm still seeing a lot of that kind of pink paint. If that's what is still being squeezed out of the brush when I put it onto the paper towel, then I can keep doing that. When it gets to the point where there's not very much residue left in the brush, then I can start to kind of rub it against the coils and really get into more of the kind of tightly packed bristled areas. Okay, and this isn't like a solid rule. Okay, if you want to clean your brushes much less neurotically than I do, that's fine. But this kind of careful cleaning and try to create as little friction as possible when I'm cleaning the brush is how I, well, one of the ways that I will try to elongate the life of the brush. Okay, so I want to try to keep it in good condition as long as possible. Okay, you notice that I put the lid right back on. That leads me to a discussion about some of the precautions that you want to take with oil paint. So some of the materials that you use are totally safe and aren't harmful in any way, and some of them are very, very toxic. A lot of the mediums are toxic, some of the pigments are toxic, the mineral spirits, even if they're odorless, they're still not something that you want to inhale. You never want to ingest or consume. You don't want to get any of the materials on your skin for any long period of time. It's going to happen. Like there's no way you're not going to, just the nature of breathing, that you're not going to breathe some of the chemicals, but you want to try to mitigate that as much as possible. Okay, so the studio that I'm in has these very high ceilings. It's a wide open space. So even in January in Iowa with frigid temperatures outside, I don't need to open the windows. Okay, there's enough airflow in here that I feel pretty safe and confident that I'm not causing cancer in my lungs. If this was a tiny dorm room or a tiny apartment space, or if the ceilings were very low, if there was no airflow, then I might be in danger. So even if your painting space is small, be sure that you have a fan running. Okay, open doors. If you have windows and it's not frigid outside, open your windows. Okay, try to maintain that airflow so you're not just continuously breathing in a cloud of fumes. You never want to, okay, this seems like common sense, but I've seen it happen many, many times. You never want to put your brushes in or near your mouth. Okay, so some students have a habit, some people have a habit of chewing on things as they're thinking, as they're working. It's just kind of an unconscious just habit that they have. And many times I have seen people with paint on their face or paint on their lips, and I think, oh, that's not good. So try to be mindful of what you're putting near your face and especially in your mouth. That being said, if you are going to eat or drink in a painting studio, try to do it when you're not actively painting. Okay, so if you're going to be eating, be sure that it's in a container. Sit away from your paint materials, both because you don't want to get crumbs or food in your paint, and also because you don't want to have any accidental residue or splashing of your mineral spirits. You don't want that to end up in any food that you have. If you need to be drinking coffee or have a water bottle or something and have it near you while you're painting, be sure that you have a lid on it. And be sure that the lid on your cleaning jar is closed. Okay. Again, from experience, I have seen people accidentally, as their mind is focused on something else, pick up their cleaning jar in an attempt to take a drink out of their coffee cup. That would be very bad. So be sure that you're mindful of any beverages you have. Try to keep them away from your painting materials, and just be conscious when you're drinking. When you're done painting, always wash your hands. Okay, even if you are the most careful painter and you don't think that there's any residue, any paint, any mineral spirits on your hands, be sure that you wash them thoroughly with soap. Okay, so the mineral spirits evaporate quickly, and when you are cleaning out your brush, it's highly likely that there's going to be some splashing, even if you don't notice it, or that you might accidentally touch your brush when it has some of the mineral spirits on it. Just know that it's much better to be safe than sorry, to just wash your hands. Make sure that then when you go on to touch your face, blow your nose, eat something with your fingers, be sure that you have clean hands, okay? You are welcome to have rubber gloves, to paint with rubber gloves, okay? That's something that many students do, and I actually have several and will be using them for a later demonstration. I personally don't like painting in rubber gloves because they make my hands very hot. However, they are just an added protection against any possibility of the paint or the materials on your skin. When you are going to finish up painting and you need to dispose of your materials, another precaution you need to take is in how you get rid of the stuff that you're using. Okay, so this paper towel, because it has wet liquid mineral spirits on it, I'm not just going to throw it in a garbage. Okay, I'm going to throw it in a non-flammable container with a lid so that there's no chance that should it spontaneously combust, which it can, it won't cause a fire. Okay. The same with any wet paint. Okay, so if I wipe the wet paint off of my palette, I'm going to put it in the same disposal tin. Okay, so it should have a lid and it should be flame resistant. You should store any flammable materials such as mineral spirits or paint mediums. Those should all be stored in a non-flammable cabinet. Okay, so if you are taking a painting class in a college classroom, that should be provided for you. If not, you're probably going to want to look into how you can safely store your paint materials at home. Okay. Never throw or never wash any paint mediums down a sink. Okay, so when you need to dispose of your mineral spirits, you do not dump them down the drain. Okay, so we'll talk about how to safely and responsibly clean your cleaning jar. You can, wash your brushes with soap and water, and we will talk about that. But first, make sure that as much paint residue and mineral spirits is off the brush. Okay. You can store, I don't have to clear off my paint here. I can store that in a place as long as it's protected. I can store that and come back to it later for a second painting session. It will not dry up excuse me, it will not dry up immediately because it's oil paint, one of the benefits of oil paint. So I can go back and reuse that same paint color if I choose to, okay? But I do want to make sure that I've put everything away, I've wiped down all my surfaces, okay? There's no runaway oil paint that has accidentally, rubbed up against the easel or the cart or a tabletop or anything that is potentially going to get on your clothes or somebody else's clothes. Okay, so you are likely painting in a shared studio, and in any shared environment, you just want to make sure that you're respecting your classmates or your studio mates, and be sure that when they are going to use the same space and the same furniture, that they use a clean version of it. Okay. The last thing we will talk about is just how frequently you need to clean your brushes. Okay, so I started with clean brushes today, and using the mineral spirits and being able to make sure that the paper towel was clean when I was wiping out the last of the residue tells me that there is no more residue left in the brush. Okay, so because this is the first time I've used these brushes since they were clean, I don't really need to clean them with soap and water. Okay, they're still pretty well conditioned. They're still nice and flexible and bouncy. If I'm going to come back to them in a day or two, then I don't need to make sure that all the mineral spirits are out of them. However, if I paint over and over and over again and do several different sessions cleaning with mineral spirits after the fact, then after a while, the brushes are going to get a little bit stiff. Okay, you're not going to get all the residue out, and some of it will still be in there and start to build up. That's when you're going to want to use soap and water. Okay, and so you have painting soap, you have brush soap or you have dish soap. So now is when you will want to use soap and water, clean them thoroughly. Again, make sure that there's no color coming out of the brush. So if you're cleaning with soap and you see that the suds are turning colors, the same color that you were using, then that means the brush isn't clean. And so you just want to do it again. So in doing so, you will keep the bristles as well maintained as possible, and they will just last a little bit longer. And that is always a good thing because it saves you money. All right. That concludes this video. I hope that you enjoy your first session of using oil paint. Happy painting.